Good morning, everyone. And welcome to an unusual Friday morning meeting, but nice to see everyone. We are, I was just looking up to say that unfortunately, Councillor Morphy and Councillor Johnson could not join us today. And with that, it is moved by Councillor Cairns and seconded by Councillor Hunter. Be it resolved that the special council agenda as presented on January 31st, 2025 be approved as circulated. Please vote. Somebody's got something on, if we can make sure our devices are silenced, please. Thank you. Okay, Council, are there any disclosures of community interest? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Cairns, we'll go to you for the land acknowledgement statement, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the First Peoples who for thousands of years before us were and are still the keepers and caretakers of this land where we now live and work, and in particular the Chippewas of Rama, Wata Mohawk First Nations, and the Moon River Métis. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. We recognize all the generations of Indigenous people and their historic connection to this place, and we are grateful for the opportunity to gather here at this time. Thank you, and miigwech.
Okay, thank you. So, just trying to find we did have sort of an agenda here. Let me just find this. Oh, did I not do that? Okay, so moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Jorgensen. Be it resolved that the report number ADM 2025-02 RE Review 2024 State of Emergency be received for information. And please vote on that. No?
That was just the introduction.
Oh, that's the introduction. Okay, perfect. So, introductory remarks, that's me. Okay, so we're here today to go over the events of the beginning of December. I mean, we all lived it. We all watched it unfold. The public, however, did not have the same front row seat as most of us did. And we also want to take the opportunity to recognize our staff for the incredible amount of work that they did in such a short period of time. People were out of their regular duties as assigned. People were taking up jobs that they wouldn't normally do. Everybody chipped in every sense of the word. Of course, the highlight is, obviously the guys out plowing our snow were working. They were the face of the work. The fire department were, I think answered about 40 calls within the first 36 hours or some crazy amount. I did read the report and it is all in there. But we are here to recognize the achievements and what we're here to say that we're really proud of, and I'm really proud of as the mayor of this town, to recognize all of our staff and all of you who chipped in, as well as our citizens as well, not so much, but today is about our staff and the town's response to the emergency. So I will pass it along to Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I first off want to thank the team that contributed to the preparation of this fairly lengthy report, all of whom are going to speak to their respective sections. So I'll kind of kick things off here, and then we'll sort of work through the report, and those that were most accountable or owned certain sections of the emergency throughout that time frame. We thought it was important to tie a bow on what was a pretty extraordinary set of circumstances in early December. And we really wanted to provide an accurate depiction of the efforts that went into trying to work through that emergency from a staff perspective, a council perspective. from a communications perspective, all of those things. So we really wanted to, we were really looking forward to this opportunity to lay all of this out in the form of a report and a presentation to council here today. I'll acknowledge some repetitiveness throughout the report. It's somewhat intentional though, because we wanted, there was various inputs into this report, and while there's some repetitiveness, it was almost necessary in order to set the stage for why things were done the way that they were. So that contributed to the length of the report for sure, but was necessary. So I'm going to touch base on what really led to the emergency declaration, a little bit about the conditions that had it remain for a little while, and then I'm going to pass the mic over to Mr. Clapp as we work through the various sections of this report. Excuse me. So as noted in the report, the town did declare the emergency on Sunday, December 1st as a result of substantial snowfall in the neighborhood of about 6 feet in a very short window. The extended closure of Highway 11, which was particularly problematic as it kept snow removal efforts from accessing a large portion of the municipality. The closure conditions, in essence, had a trickle-down effect as well that resulted in closures of other roads other than the highway as well. So further exacerbating the issue was the extraordinary number of down power lines, down trees, which really slowed efforts as well, and I know Mr. Stacy's going to get into some of those details. But taking a step back, you'll of course recall the winter storm hit the area the weekend of November 29th, 30th, and December 1st. Town resources were deployed at that time to try and address the snowfall that was hitting us as per the provincial standards. Similarly, the province deployed its resources to take care of Highway 11. On Saturday, November 30th, the storm intensified, and we started to hear increased reports of stranded vehicles. Power outages were reported along with downed trees and branches and power lines. The town declared a significant weather event at that time, which is the legislative tool used to suspend winter control timeframes. Later in the day on November 30th, Highway 11 was closed due to the storm and a transport truck which had jackknifed on the highway, blocking traffic. At that time, truck removal timeframes were varied, but we certainly didn't expect the highway to be closed as long as it was. Motorists were stopped and trapped on the highway. Some of these individuals were eventually transported later that day to Gravenhurst Town Hall, the facility we're in here today, where town representatives met them and later found emergency accommodations. We're going to get a little bit more detail about some of these things as we roll out the presentation here, but I'm just summarizing how we landed where we did. So at about 2:30 a.m. on Sunday, December 1st, following the OPP requesting the town to establish a warming center to accept the stranded motorists along Highway 11, the emergency control group, which had been convening throughout the evening or early morning, had reconvened and Mayor Lorenz declared a state of emergency at that time. Why? Emergency services were very limited and in some instances just unable to respond. Town clearing crews and contractors were clearing roads, but the work was incredibly limited slowed due to the obstacles such as the trees, power lines, and limbs, and at this point, abandoned vehicles along our roadways. Suffice to say, the Highway 11 closure was very problematic and a big contributor to why we needed to declare the state of emergency, which then led to the OPP requesting us in the early morning hours to open a center of some kind so that they could have those that were stranded delivered to the Centennial Center. Estimates of hydro outages now appeared to be more distant based on the amount of damage. We were getting more and more information at the time about this. It, of course, became clear that we were likely going to have to set up a more formalized reception center of some kind that was becoming evident at this point. So all of that contributed to the decision to declare a state of emergency. So while efforts continued later into the day on December 1st, the town announced it was working with Emergency Management Ontario representatives, continuing to work with the OPP, District of Muskoka representatives, Alexicon, Hydro One officials, and neighboring municipalities, municipal representatives in response to the emergency. The town announced the Centennial Center would continue to be open as a warming center. However, the messaging at that time remained, based on the dangerous conditions of the roadways, please stay home. Eventually, this became a more formalized reception center, which Ms. Halford will get into here shortly. On December 2nd, the town announced that the emergency was continuing and that people should continue to avoid travel, all for the same reasons. Town snowplow crews and contractors continued to work to clear roads, but the effort remained limited due to the obstacles. Highway 11 remained closed still at this time. The OPP advised that snow clearing efforts were continuing along Highway 11 between Highway 60 in Huntsville and West Street in Orillia. Mr. Stacy will get into more of the details of this shortly, but it was at this point where resources from outside municipalities started to arrive, including but not limited to York Region, Simcoe County, and Vaughan. So I think that will suffice as a stage setter, Madam Mayor. I think I'll pass things over to Todd Clapp. Mr. Clapp is, of course, our Community Emergency Management Coordinator, who I must say did an incredible job throughout the emergency, doing just that, coordinating, keeping the emergency control group informed, keeping in touch with all of the necessary contacts throughout the emergency, and all doing so with an incredible calmness, which is incredibly important during situations like this. So I think with that, Madam Mayor, I'll leave it there.
Okay, Deputy Chief, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Council. As CIO Lucas mentioned, there's lots to get through this morning, so I'm going to do my best to stick to my section, and that is the Emergency Control Group. All of the members whom are around me this morning. The primary goal of this group during emergencies, like we experienced last month, is for the business continuity of our community, health and safety of our residents, visitors, and staff. And in this particular case, our contractors that also helped us out. As an aside, since I have the floor, I would be remiss to not mention that our coordination here is a direct result of the continuous training that is always ongoing to maintain our emergency plan and our program, and that's also supported by council. So thank you for that. November 30th, things were changing very, very quickly, as we know they do at the beginning of emergencies. They escalate very, very quickly, and the group's work began even before we met virtually on November 30th. Lots was happening, and emails and text messages were flying throughout the day. But we did officially meet for the first time virtually mid-afternoon on November 30th. And over the following 2 weeks, we met nearly 15 times. During the first 48 hours, most of the members of the group were so busy coordinating that most of them were not able to lay their head down because it was so very busy. Our meetings were organized as operational briefings, primarily scheduled into what are known as operational cycles. It was obvious in the early part of our coordination that town staffing resources were limited because people simply couldn't get into work, myself included, and other members of the emergency control group as well. So fortunately, we have the ability to meet virtually, and that's just what we did. Because of this, a lot of members, not only on the control group, but across the organization, were shifting into positions that were outside of their normal responsibilities, and were taking on different responsibilities. A good example of this was Director Halford taking on the reception center manager role, as Director Patterson was unable to also get in from home. Because of this, we also knew that we were somewhat staff limited, and that led to the deployment of several NGO organizations into town, which I'm sure you'll hear about a little bit later. Because things were changing so quickly early in the event, every few hours, the group would meet and decisions collectively made for the next operational cycle. The group would disperse, share with their teams, and implement their plans. This cycle was recurring for several days because things were escalating so quickly. There was a lot of information to share and a lot of change in direction. Between these emergency control group meetings, obviously our members were coordinating with all of those other resources, some of which CAO Lucas already mentioned. As well as Mayor Lorenzo was also communicating regularly with council. We're still compiling the plethora of notes, emails, text messages, meeting minutes. Legislative Services is working on that project at the moment, but I will end my section with this. If the information that we've gathered and I've seen so far is even a small sense of the work and coordination that our members undertook, it was a more tremendous effort than even I imagined. And it has certainly made this community emergency management coordinator very proud. So thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Todd. You know, Scott said how calm. Todd's very calm. I have to say, Todd was like the pillar of calmness throughout all of this. So I appreciated that he did receive a couple frantic texts and calls from me, and talking to Todd is very comforting and soothing. So we appreciate your part in this, Todd. Yeah, it was very impressive how calm, cool, and collected you remained throughout the whole process. Okay, so we're going now to Andrew, another really calm person. I mean, we've built a really calm team, so I appreciate that.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning, Council and community. My presentation is a bit of a storyline, so bear with me, and certainly if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them afterwards. There is a bit of repetitiveness, but I think it's important to have that repetitiveness to understand the scale and scope of what we went through as a department. So for us, really, the Friday, November 29th, was when it really started. We were tackling pretty hefty snowfall at that particular time, and during that evening, we received a number of calls about downed trees through our community. And my foreman is behind me here in the audience, but if I recollect, at that particular night, we cleared about 40 trees off of district roads just to make roads passable. And at this point, snow is continuing to accumulate as we're doing this. So on Saturday, we anticipated it would be a cleanup effort, likely a long day for the team, maybe a 10, 12-hour day, and we were prepared for that. So as the crews come in on the 30th, we get to the yard, start cleaning off the equipment. We discovered that about 2 to 3 feet have fallen at our yard. At the same time, I don't believe we had power at the yard at the time. Our heat supply was temperamental, so we were working under extreme conditions as well. So we all left our homes, cleaned our driveways, went to the shop, cleaned the driveways, and went out to do our business. As we were doing our routes, came across, as CAO Lucas has indicated, lots of downed trees, lots of power lines, and what this does for us, it's really a barrier, especially when there's a power line. We can't cross that line. The next course of action, once we come across that instance, is to phone the LDC, the local distribution company, to report our findings, and really we're at the mercy of the LDC to rectify that line for us to proceed with our operations. But you can imagine with road corridors that are piling up with snow, even the LDC is having challenges coming into our community to move these power lines. So at that particular time, it became evident that as a department, we were unable to meet our legislative requirements under the provincial minimum maintenance standards. So we reached out to our, or I reached out to our peers, other directors, other area municipalities to have the discussion of how their municipalities are functioning, and that collectively we determined that given that many of us also have district roads in our communities, for consistent approach across the municipality, we would declare a significant weather event. But again, at that time, we weren't really truly understanding how dynamic and how bad the snow event was gonna be for us. Later that day, the Highway 11 was closed. With the closure of Highway 11, it's actually pretty scary for Gravenhurst, to be honest with you. We could not get to anywhere of Ward 3, so that remained untouched, other than we were fortunate to have a contractor in the area who was willing to help us out or able to help us out, but even they had limitations because they were coming across down trees and power lines. So there was a lot of roads that couldn't be cleared. And really much of Ward 4 was inaccessible to us. So again, I referred to that declaration that we passed, and we were hoping that we could restore stuff to within a 48-hour period. However, moving into the Sunday, December 1st, an additional 2.5 to 3 feet had fallen. So to recap, the extraordinariness of this long-duration storm event, I'll refer it to, is we now have 6 feet in our road corridors in some of our areas in our community. And what this means, what this meant for our people coming to our community is they're coming to a Highway 11 closure looking for relief. So they're going to travel down our side streets. They're going to go down Kilworthy Road, or they're going to try to go down Kilworthy Road. And in doing this, they're getting stuck. So we had abandoned cars. We had 53-foot tractor trailers stranded, scattered all throughout our community, which again was adding obstacles to our ability to clear the roads. Tow vehicles couldn't make it up here to help these folks. So many of these vehicles stayed there for days, again, impeding our ability to do what we need to do. The snow at this point was so dense that even our plow trucks were ineffective in pushing it. They couldn't use their wings, and it was a slow go. It was really all hands on deck at this point. We looked at what we had for a fleet complement, and we actually rented some different attachments for our fleet. And like for an example, we bought a blade for our backhoe now, so now we can use our backhoe during winter operations. Our sidewalk machines weren't able to cut through the banks. We rented a ribbon blower. There will be a recommendation coming forward shortly with a recommendation to purchase these rentals, as we still have them in our inventory because we're still using them today. And snow continued to fall beyond a rate that weather forecasters were predicting. Following Her Worship's emergency declaration, that really was at the point when things opened up to us and really provided the town with an opportunity with tackling things a little differently than what we had at our fingertips. I'll tell you, the response from the public sector once that emergency declaration was sent out was incredible, nothing short of incredible. I had professionals across the entire province of Ontario, fire chiefs, directors of public works, all people who have experienced critical situations, reaching out to me just to see how I was doing, even if they couldn't help, because they realized the stress that this puts people under to being under these working under these conditions. So for that, I'm truly touched. Later this year, I will be going to Good Roads, and I'll actually be meeting up with a lot of these folks that I had the opportunity to talk to them over the phone, and we're looking forward to kibitzing. My understanding, some of these folks who are able to help us are also looking at their own preparedness and working with their communities to see, and using Gravenhurst as a bit of a case study, but daily I was getting phone calls from people throughout this province saying, "How you doing today, Andrew? How's your team doing today, Andrew? We got your back if you need us." And it was this whole support system in itself, truly incredible. Anyway, back to the story. As a result of, again, the Highway 11 closure, we weren't able to get equipment up Highway 11, which means we had to divert them up Highway 400, which extended the route up to Muskoka. So by, I think you declared the declaration by 1:30. I think within the hour I had Simcoe County, York Region, and resources from Vaughan lined up to come up to Gravenhurst to help. So they came up Highway 11 via the 400 corridor, and they staged in at the Muskoka Wharf. So it was really at this point in time that we went from a reactive operations to a strategic operation. At the onset of the operation, folks are calling the town, and I think it was sheer panic, to be honest with you, not knowing what to do. I mean, they look at the front door, there's no power, the road's got 6 feet of snow in it, maybe they're slow on groceries, their house is running propane. I think it was sheer panic, and we did get some criticism, and I want to give a shout out to the professionalism my frontline staff showed when dealing with these individuals. Could we please everybody? No, but often they were a sympathetic ear on the other end, and they provided the support that resident needed to feel it's okay, we're going to get to you. So my kudos to them. But moving into a strategic deployment, basically what we did is we gridded out the municipality and we focused on district roads first, and then from district roads we went into the side streets. Now the initial goal was 1 lane passable only. There's almost 700 kilometers of lane kilometers of road in Gravenhurst. So you can imagine once we get it open, now we bring in the resources, the municipal resources with the blowers and the loaders to actually work those road platforms a bit more and widen it incrementally. It still took a long time. However, by December 3rd, so we're now 3-4 days into the storm event, the phones really started to light up in infrastructure services as many people were still without power and were running dangerously low on propane, including the public workshop. We were jockeying, I remember we were jockeying jerry cans of fuel around. In addition to managing the snow, we have a bunch of generators here. Fuel supply wasn't coming to Gravenhurst. Propane wasn't coming to our facilities. So we were actually jockeying fuel out of some of our equipment that we weren't using to fill up our tanks to heat the buildings. Again, truly all hands on deck. However, the team persevered and we started to gain some traction. Staff worked approximately 15-hour days on a continual basis, and once staff went home after an exhausting 15-hour day, administration came in behind them and was working the midnight hours to figure out what are we going to do for the next day and how are we going to coordinate the next day. By December 4th, a major milestone was achieved, at least I think it's a major milestone, whereby all district roads at this point were now 2-lane passable, and 90% of our rural roads were at least 1 lane passable for vehicles and delivery equipment, vehicles. Adding to the chaos, I'll call it, at 3:30 in the morning, I got a phone call from my foreman to say the sand dome has just collapsed. I won't repeat to you what words came out of my mouth when I heard that, but immediately got my gear on and went to the public workshop to meet with the staff to figure out what are we going to do next. It was later confirmed through a structural evaluation that there was approximately 16 tons of snow sitting on the roof of the salt dome, which collapsed. Fortunately, no contractors were hurt, no staff were hurt, but again, it added another obstacle. So not only are we dealing with the snow, the downed power lines, the lack of fuel to our facilities, now we've got to deal with another issue, is where we're going to get sand and salt to put on the roads. Fortunately, good relations with the neighbors to the north of us. By 5:30 that morning, we were pulling product out of the town of Bracebridge. So my thanks to the town of Bracebridge for the assistance they provided us. And including the District of Muskoka, they opened up their Glen Orchard Yard for us to pull product out of there for salt. Although it did add additional travel time to our to each plow route. As winter operations continued, between December 11th and December 15th, we brought on more resources and really we blitzed the town. That was when we felt at that point we had most of the rural area dealt with. So now we're going to move into in town, and at that point we blitzed the town for snow removal and scraping of snowpack roads, and that went over for about 4 days. It was also discovered during that time that contractors servicing private properties were also having challenges finding places to put their snow. So they were using our dump to store their product. So by this point, the dump is now full of snow. So to combat that, we brought in blowers that were running basically 24 hours a day, blowing the pit, moving all that snow to the back of the pit, just to give us room to bring product in. And then by December 16th, we felt we were at a stage where the roads were at a state of repair that met the provincial maintenance standard, and we lifted that event, so returned to normal. But even though we're out of this storm, I wouldn't say we're back to normal in the sense. We still have very high snowbanks in our community, and we're working to address that in some shape or form. We do feel that the operational budget this year, although outside of the storm, will take a bit of a hit to manage all these snowbanks that we have now. As far as the salt dome, a tender has now closed for the replacement of the dome, and there'll be a report on the February 11th Committee of the Whole agenda with a recommendation to hire a contractor to replace that dome. Although I do anticipate that it will be likely 8 to 10 weeks before we actually have a dome that's operational. But to put some context, as far as how much time my staff worked overtime, collectively my team worked over 700 hours overtime, which is an incredible amount of time. I am incredibly proud to be part of the team I am. They surprised me every day with some of how they can operate some of the equipment and how they care. I truly have a caring team that loves Gravenhurst and wants to do the best they can for Gravenhurst. And it's real humbling to lead that team, and getting a little emotional here, but proud, I guess all I can say. I'm very, very proud of this team, and my thanks to everybody. It was all hands on deck. No matter what the rank, the responsibility, we all came together, and we achieved an incredible feat. And it is certainly something that I'll reflect on as a high point of my municipal career, despite the situation we faced. So I'll leave it there. Any questions? Fire away.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I think what we'll do is we're going to hear from Jared, and then we're going to go, we'll do questions for the first three presenters, and then we'll split it up in that sense, Council, just so you know. If you have any questions, just jot them down. Supposed to be no crying in 2025, so I will now go to Jared. I just want to tell a anecdote. I went to the fire hall at 2:30, or I think it was whatever time it was, and I just wanted to note that we had firefighters, training officers, some of who are here today, stationed there, sleeping, to be able to respond to the public. It was very moving. You know, I roll in after having to blow my driveway too, because I had to get out to come there. And, you know, there are firefighters in the middle of the night stationed at the fire station. And so I just want to take the moment to thank you, thank them publicly for that dedication, and to say, you know, the public have, I mean, this is why we're doing this today, because there's really no idea of how much effort and work and dedication this, you know, was put towards this, you know, emergency. But we will go to Jared. He's got way more stories than I do, but I just wanted to thank those firefighters that were there, sleeping on couches and in chairs and, you know, out to help. So we just can't thank everyone enough, but we're focusing on the fire department right now. So, Jared, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Lorenz. Good morning, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to Gravenhurst Fire and Emergency Services part in the what we're calling, I've heard it called Snowmageddon, the blizzard battle of 2024. Anyway, firefighters are good at coming up with monikers for things, but I'm not going to read my thing verbatim. I'll go through, and those that know me, when you mentioned I might tell stories, thought, well, we're going to be here till tomorrow at this time, but I'll do my best to keep it professional and keep it on time. And I'm sure my deputy chief will kick me if I go too long. So yeah, as with what Andrew had, Director Stacey had pointed out, really for us as well, the event started to unfold November 29th. We started to getting the calls in that were related to the storm. And they were everything that you could expect. Our normal calls that we get, I don't want to say normal routine calls, but calls that we get, alarm calls and that. But then we started to get the hydro lines down. And one thing that I really want to highlight with not only the hydro lines being down, but carbon monoxide incidents. And generally, I'm happy to say, majority of the time we respond to a carbon monoxide alarm, it's that someone hasn't replaced a battery in their carbon monoxide alarm. So if you haven't done that, check it. But however, all of our carbon monoxide incidents that we went to were real. They had carbon monoxide. There was dangerous levels of carbon monoxide in homes. And this was due to improperly installed generators and things of such nature, people using fired appliances and fuel-fired appliances incorrectly. So again, when I have the opportunity, I'd like to just, this opportunity, just educate everyone, be very careful. Make sure you get your things done correctly, because as I'm going to speak at the end of it, our fire prevention division, also as Director Stacey alluded to, it's not over for us. The emergency's still going. There's still tons of work to do after it. So as the storm progressed, it became quite apparent. I luckily made it to the station before roads started to get closed. But we were having issues, our firefighters were having issues getting to the stations. Call after call after call came in. And as Her Worship has alluded to, our members decided that it was much easier to stay at the fire hall than it was to slug through the snow, because most of them slugged through the snow on foot to get to the fire station in the first place. Our stations 2 and 3, no one could get to them, to the items already spoken to, down lines, transport trucks every which way. So in some cases, and I'm very happy to say there was a couple instances where I, as the fire chief, was going to have to refuse service. And some of my firefighters in those areas actually stepped up, utilized their own personal equipment, their own personal things they could get to, stranded motorists, helping with the things as best they could. A fire truck may not have shown up to a couple of these calls, but Gravenhurst firefighters did. I'm very happy to say that. We also assisted with shuttling people around once the evacuation on Highway 11 began. We worked closely with Muskoka Lakes Fire, Bracebridge Fire, our friends of the OPP, and the Muskoka Paramedic Services. We did receive some interesting calls. I highlighted a few of them. Got a phone call or an email about Bell Canada needed help accessing their generators because the cell system was about to go down for the area because they were running low on power for their generators, or fuel for the generators. Director Stacey CC'd me on an email from CP Rail that indicated we may have a train rescue to go through. Thankfully we didn't, but we did work with CP Rail to rectify that. And then Councillor Johnston reached out to us to ask if we were able to go down and assist with the Seguin that was listing. So we assisted with that with the folks at the steamships who did a Herculean effort to make sure the Seguin stayed upright. And we did respond to 40 plus calls in 36 hours. That may not seem like, to those listening at home that know big city fire departments that roll hundreds of calls in a day or maybe in a week. But when you figure our average call volume a year is 300 and we did 40 in a day and a half. 40 plus, it was actually 48 calls. So it, and with a staff made up of people who have families and their own primary jobs to go to, that's a pretty, again, I'll use the term Herculean effort. Eventually, due to the efforts of our great infrastructure services team and the help we had in from other municipalities, Station 2 and 3 became accessible. We were able to access our resources such as our UTV, which became invaluable as the emergency rolled on. This was about the time that Georgian Bay Search and Rescue, who I could not say enough about, arrived in town and immediately set up at Station 1, and they immediately began the process of working through calls we had received or emails that Legislative Services had created Emergency Calls Tracker, and it was fantastic. It was a great system for us it was updated in real time. We were able to triage calls, it was a really good team effort. And also the staff in Infrastructure Services also were keeping us updated on the same call tracker about road closures. You know, you're not going to be able to get through there right now. Here's what you should do, and that kind of thing. So it was really all the departments working together. And at the end of it all, Georgian Bay Search and Rescue made hundreds and hundreds of phone calls. I walked into our training room, and there were 6 of them all on cell phones talking to people. And in many cases, that phone call was all that person wanted. My admin clerk, Jackie McFarland, also made several calls at that time talking to people just to reassure them that things were going okay. However, we did make over 20 missions out with the Georgian Bay Search and Rescue Team and Gravenhurst firefighters to deliver gas, water, food, or extract persons in distress. So we brought some people back into the reception center, and this was some good news stories. But these were all made into areas that were inaccessible. So again, getting that UTV back into where we could use it was fantastic. We were, as a sidebar, we were also able to, with that machine, while our department does not do medicals, in the state of emergency, you kind of go and do what you need to do to help each other out. We were able to assist Muskoka paramedics on 3 separate critical life incident calls where firefighters were able to get in with that UTV and get people out to medical assistance. So throughout the storm, to sum up, we responded, I'm going to say in about an 8-day period, we did 70 calls, 911 calls for service. That does not include those calls that we went on delivering food. Administration, we delivered quite a bit of food as well during the day to places we could get to with pickup trucks. But I can't say enough, and I'm going to use the opportunity as a soapbox as well. You know, a lot of our community members stepped up and helped each other out. A lot of our community members were prepared for such an emergency. I don't think it's a secret. These things aren't going away. I hope we all take the lessons learned from this, both our citizens, our staff, and everyone else, and we realize that we need to be prepared at home, because no matter the intent, and I can say 100% that I'm very proud of the emergency control group I get to work with, all members of all departments in this town, my firefighters, despite our best efforts, and my God, they were great efforts, people still need to be wary of their own safety at home, and many were and took care of each other, and that community spirit's incredible. But as I said earlier, many of these calls have led to follow-up by our Fire Prevention Division, which thankfully has grown by 1 as per our last budget. And we have to follow up with TSSA. We have legislative requirements. We have to follow up when we find things that are obviously causing public danger. That's our job. We need to follow up with them. We have to get alarms and detectors installed, and many of these things are varied in how it's not just a simple visit and plug and play. So again, as we go out to do these things, our prevention folks are ensuring that there's an increased level of safety, but also reminding people that battery backup alarms, that kind of thing, are a good thing to have, because these emergencies are not going to go away. But I thank you again for the opportunity to speak today. Again, very, very proud to be a part of the Gravenhurst Fire Team and of this community and the folks who I work alongside in every department. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. I've got nothing to add. I mean, it's staggering when you think about that number of 48 calls in 36 hours. That's pretty staggering. Council, are there any questions to the presentations we've had so far? So from any questions for our Deputy Chief, our Director of Infrastructure, or our Chief? Okay, so I'm going to go over to Councillor Jorgensen, beat you to the draw there. Councillor Jorgensen.
Thank you, Your Worship. Director Stacey alluded to the fact that certainly our rural wards 3 and 4 were much more difficult, as I think would be expected. And something I was just thinking about as the chief was speaking was the community members who stepped up. And there's probably a lot of them that we were not aware of because, they operated in the background helping out each other. But I'm wondering, first of all, we've always said, be prepared, I think, for 72 hours to be self-sufficient. But obviously in the rural areas, there were people who had no power, no access for quite a bit longer perhaps than that. And I'm wondering if there's a way of coordinating, through your services, the wonderful community members. A lot of us out in the rural areas are as you alluded to, more capable of doing stuff than others, clearing snow and getting access. But I'm wondering if there's a mechanism here that we could use our community members who have that ability to help, people who call in that need some assistance and coordinate on a slightly larger scale, not just our own resources, but people in the community who are able to help out. I'm just wondering about your thoughts on that.
Chief?
Thank you, Your Worship. To Councillor Jorgensen, thank you for the question. That was already being undertaken during this emergency. That emergency calls tracker was also, that Legislative Services put together, they were also taking care of, and so was Infrastructure Services were feeding into, there was a section on the bottom that was resources. So one thing Georgian Bay Search and Rescue and Admin Clerk McFarland were doing was hooking up local people with local resources for help. We did have a lot out in your ward. And also my captain at Station 3 was also doing a lot of that, coordinating local efforts that was going through us. So that was already happening, I would say organically for the first few days, and then it became something that was a lot more concrete, and it was like, hey, if anybody needs this person's, it was on the master sheet that we all had access to. So it was happening. Yeah.
Councillor Strength?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. This isn't my original question, but I wonder, is there any appetite going forward for some sort of educational access to helping the general population becoming more prepared for such an event? I don't have, obviously that costs money and there's lots added on to that, but I wonder if that's something that anybody's thought about. But my original question was to Mr. Stacey, are we still utilizing the sand and salt from outside? Are we able to use our own facility without a roof on it?
Through you, Your Worship. So we've now removed all our sand outside of the dome, so it's actually sitting out in the elements, so we don't need to use other sources anymore. But it's not ideal, and it's really a short-term fix. It wouldn't be something that I would recommend that we do in perpetuity, because it takes away from the principles of salt management. So to answer your question, we're operating on our own right now.
No, I didn't know if the chief or deputy chief wanted to address the first portion. I think, I do know that the 72 hours does come from the province. That's really where that's from, but deputy?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to the councillor. Yes, we do some of that. The mayor is exactly right. Historically, it has been based on 72-hour kits, though I think that this event and many others have shown us that that simply may not be long enough. So we started to change gears a little bit and recommend to people to keep things, build an inventory of things that can keep them for a little bit longer. And we'll continue with that. We have some different ideas this year to capture people's attention, and we hope that after an event like this, people are going to heed that advice, because that's the key to the whole thing.
Okay, are there any other questions for the first three? I don't want to call you presenters, because it's, yeah. Okay, so now we are going to go to Madam Clerk. You may, again, and I think the public will be surprised, what does a clerk have to do, and the clerk's department and administration staff have to do with an emergency? Well, we're going to find out. Like I said, it's all hands on deck, so everybody played a role. So over to you, Madam Clerk.
Thank you to the mayor and all of council. I'm very pleased to sit here today and present to you the customer service role in an emergency. Like my colleagues before me, I want to extend a special kudos to my team who did not know that they were up for this challenge and succeeded. It was a hard couple of weeks, but I'm very proud of everyone. Now, just sidebar, our communication specialist, Mike Jennings, is part of our team. However, I won't be highlighting his work myself. Under an emergency, he's got a special category, and he will be presenting that special legislative role later. So my focus will just be on the customer service side. So the town's emergency management plan does have a specific role for legislative services and my team, and that is opening, staffing, and operating the customer service desk. The plan specifically says the municipal office, but I'm very proud of the volume of technological investments this corporation has made over the past 5 years. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to operate. So many of our staff on my team, myself including, were not able to get physically into the municipal office. But we had work to do, and our technologies, cloud-based and other collaborative tools, allowed us to seamlessly transition outside of our regular hours, outside of our regular workplace, seamlessly to provide service, and I'm going to talk about some of that. So my story, I was part of the team on November 30th, which was a Saturday, when the declaration of significant weather event occurred. For the first 2 days, the Saturday and Sunday, I myself manned the phones, the emails, the customer service. We were early on, and I didn't actually think it would get to where we got to, so I was happy to do that over that time. However, Sunday, the declaration emergency event was declared, and advertisements started to use my direct extension for contact because I was sitting there able to answer the phones and take those connections and monitor it over those first 2 days. Come Monday, my report gives you some high-level trends. There were a lot more trends, but I do want to speak to some of them because the calls and requests and themes do shift over the 2 weeks. So the that first 2 days were just the status of when the plows are coming to my street, to my neighborhood, to my community. It was clear that not everyone really understood the volume of snow and issues of our road access were happening, especially because our message was please stay home if you can, which we appreciated, but then you're not seeing all what's happening. So there was a lot of questions about that. Wondering where information or emergency message could be found, reporting things such as fallen trees, abandoned vehicles, high windrows, looking for that third-party contact for contractors. And there we started to get the calls for people who were stranded on Highway 11. We received quite a lot of calls from people who needed help who decided not to evacuate, and therefore we had to provide different services for them. So that was the first couple of days, and then we come Monday, December 2nd. All of my team were able to report in some way, although not in the physical office, and that is when the tracker started that some of my colleagues have talked about. Because of the investments in technology, it was a shared document and was able to be collected, that information, and all were able to access and view and contribute. I can tell you by the end of the emergency, that document is over 60 pages long of calls and inquiries for service and communications back and forth between our various parties on follow-up, resolve, needing more things. So everything related to the emergency was logged and tracked in that tool. And that tool was able to show us those themes, show us the trends, find areas that were underserviced or in more dire need, And it was all of us looking in and working and contributing together that we were able to proactively reach out when we could to some of the more hit areas that needed our assistance. So I will say that the emails and the phone lines were monitored 24/7. So there were always people accessing them. Because of our shared services as well, we were able to work with the District of Muskoka, who were able to transfer directly to us seamlessly calls from their social service line, as well as be able to understand the messaging back and forth. So it was, if someone called the district, they were able to transfer directly to us without knowing that they'd switched to a different organization. During this phase, the sort of post-introductory emergency, a couple days in, the calls continued and themes continued and changed a bit. So there's continuing lots of status of when am I road going to be plowed. This is when some of the displeasure of the status of the roads and the quality and quantity came up. The highway was still closed at this time, and we received several requests from people to ask us to reopen the highway, either just reopen it or reopen for special access for personal needs, such as we are traveling through the area or we need to get south for medical. And I will say it was very hard for people to hear that we were unable to do that, or we could not give you a time in your road. Here's what's happening. But patience and understanding was dwindling. We got requests for people outside of the area to do emergency check-ins on family, which we were helped to do, but we also had quite a lot of calls from property owners who don't reside full-time to do checks on their property for just status of their properties. We started receiving requests for food, for hotels, for third parties to come in and do property maintenance. There were a lot of questions about water and shower facilities. There were questions about where's the Army. There were questions about a personal contractor we hired and paid, and they're not performing the service that we paid for. Asking the municipality to intervene or to perform that service on behalf of the third party. There was also at this phase a lot of seasonal residents who had come up for the weekend, thinking they'd be there for the weekend in a home that's not stocked or prepared for a long winter event, and they weren't able to get out. And the panic sort of started to run, especially as lots lived on private roads where municipal crews do not normally, and based on these variety of situations, things were getting scarier for them. On day 3, once the highway was reopened, that was a huge, huge win for a lot of people. There were still endless questions about status of personal roads, more requests for the Army, but this time it funneled to wanting these people to come in to clear roofs, clear windrows, expecting or requesting some kind of service beyond what would normally come in. There were also some positives during this time. There were a lot of offers from third-party contractors, either paid or volunteering, wanting to come to the area. One of my favorite calls that I had a pleasure to take was from a seniors resident in Belleville, so nowhere near to us, who had been following us on the news, and they wanted to contribute in some way. They wanted to deliver supplies, but I said it's probably, if this very kind of you, if you'd really like to, traveling here is an issue, a monetary donation to some of our groups, such as the Salvation Army, Gravenhurst Against Poverty, other sorts of things, would probably be the biggest impact, and they were happy to do so. And to be honest, there's no crying in this meeting, Mayor Lorenz, but after I took that call, I did have some tears of very tired and frustrated and dealing with a lot of really unhappy people, but to know that there's people outside of our community who care and want to do something, and they don't have to, opting to do so was pretty amazing. Back to some other calls, though. There was a lot of questions about internal road closures still being closed. We started receiving our litigation threats of frozen pipes and road conditions. That's why we have records management to preserve our records if those things come to fruition. And there was also a lot of frustrated residents about different priorities, specifically snow removal. We had a lot of people who wanted everything right away, and I'm sure the roads crew and others would love to be able to do that, but things had to be prioritized, and it wasn't always aligned with what the person on the other line wanted. So seniors communities, they wanted their roads done. School zones needed and the children walking to school and that kind of stuff, they didn't feel safe. Designating community safety zones, as well as our downtown core. Those are a lot of areas in our community, and not to minimize any of them, they're all very important. But it was really hard to, although providing facts and information, to have people satisfied with what they were hearing. Eventually, all that stuff sort of went through, and we were able to sort of wind down the actual emergency. The end of it, there were no emergency requests for emergency services from evacuation, rescue, and sort of food. Instead, we kind of worked with a different phase with our infrastructure services team, who would give us a morning briefing of what the priorities were for that particular day. So our inquiries that came in wondering, when are my roads going to be plowed? We were able to give more factual information than saying, please be patient and stay tuned with, these are the areas that are working on today. Again, didn't always align the priorities and needs of the person on the phone, but that detail of here's where your crews are working today was a very helpful message to deliver. I will say our infrastructure service team, obviously, the customer service on their team had a lot of calls. The goal with activating the emergency customer service reception lines and having so many of my staff in there and advertising these extensions, myself and the general reception, rather than infrastructure, the goal was to divert as many calls directly from infrastructure, who have a staff of 2 versus the staff of the 5 of us. And I think we did really well at that diversion and ability to answer and talk to and provide information through all hours of the emergency. I'm very, very proud of my team, the way we all handled the very challenging situation. It's quite an experience, but I'm really proud to have been able to lead and use our technologies and support our community as best as we could. Thanks.
Okay. Just as a side note, being able to, during some of these emergency management calls and some of these positivities, and I received a number of personal notes and thank yous, and I know that those are the things that will stick with me. So, okay. We're going to Melissa.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. So the component of the emergency that I was helping with was the 2 warming centers / reception centers. So both instances were because I live in town and was able to access it easier. That's part of the reason why. And Director Patterson was just a phone call away should I need her. So it was really a team effort, and I've never been a part of a team like this, and I'm going to try not to be emotional, but it was such an eye-opening and incredible experience for me professionally and personally, and I just am just so blessed to be on this team, so that's all I'm gonna say. So, it was a team effort. The first night when the OPP had asked for us to set up a warming center, the logical location would have been the Centennial Center, however, it did not have power at the time. So we had everybody here in Town Hall, and there were staff and council volunteers here helping out. Well, not council, the mayor, because of her role in the emergency. So we welcomed folks here and had food. Tried to find food around when everything was closed, but thankfully we were able to coordinate with Sobeys and some inside track we had there to get some food over here, as well as when power came on in shifts on the main street, restaurant Essence of Spice sent over some delicious homemade food for about 20 folks that we had here in Town Hall. So once the vehicles that were stranded out on the highway were brought over to the Canadian Tire parking lot, and the keys were returned to folks, the expectation from OPP was that they were just to be sent off into the night. And we, of course, being Gravenhurst, did not want to do that because we're a caring community. So we were able to, the Deputy Chief Clapp relied on his contacts at Muskoka Victim Services, and we were able to get hotel rooms at Taboo for all of the people that were stranded here. So that was an incredible feat, trying to call around and find places to put folks, and when everything was filled with hockey tournament guests to the community. So they were able to be safe after that. So just when we thought that we were able to go home for a nice nap, the mayor was in a position that she had to declare an emergency that night. So it was all hands on deck again, as everyone said, and the Centennial Center was prepared for the reception of up to 100 motorists, and the recreation facility staff were the primary volunteers and representatives at that time at the reception center. It wasn't, it didn't have all of the accoutrements that we had later, because it was a snap. We had to respond in a very quickly, but eventually we were able to set that the reception center up to be very welcoming and supplied. So the first night there were some folks that spent the night, and then as we formalized the reception center, we were able to have resources there. So what happened when the NGOs were called in, the Salvation Army, Global Medic, and the District of Muskoka all provided services. So Global Medic came in with hundreds of boxes of food, which contained several days worth of canned food for folks, and the Salvation Army also provided 2 food trucks, which could then be deployed if necessary, and they could prepare food and provide that to people that came into the reception center. The Calvary Church in town also provided pre-made frozen meals that were such an incredible resource to have, so that we could provide additional food safe, prepared in a proper kitchen food for people that came to the reception center. So that was really just such a kind offer to bring that over. Global Medic showed up with hundreds of hygiene kits, so folks that came into the reception center that needed a hot shower didn't have to worry about bringing all of their stuff. We had kits for them, towels and all of that. So we provided that to the community. The District of Muskoka also provided cots, so we had a full sleeping area available to the public if they needed it. The other thing that I had not realized with the establishment of a reception center is there's lots of things you have to think about that you wouldn't necessarily think about at first. Like, do you have a space if there's a breastfeeding family that needs space for that? Do you have a space that if there's an autistic child that needs a space to get away from, the hustle and bustle of the reception center? Do you have a space for that? So all of these things that I didn't know, but that were in the plan, so I just had to look to it and find. So I can't say enough about our emergency planning exercises here at the town. It's, it was incredible just to be able to follow along on, I love lists and procedure, and we had all of that, so it was great. The other thing is that the health unit has to come in and do an inspection, like all of these things that you don't necessarily think about, but take a lot of coordination effort and making sure that you are informed. So the folks that came in from Global Medic also provided security over the evening hours, because you have to think about security. You're providing this open facility at all hours of the night, and you have to think about how many people are in the facility and what resources do you have, and so they provided also that security level as well. Something that I was really proud of town staff for developing was the tracker system that Director Thibault spoke about. Global Medic, who is known globally for the work that they do in the community and their innovative solutions to emergencies, they were very interested in this tracker system that had been developed because it was very low tech but high effectiveness. So everybody could go into this Word document in SharePoint and you could see real time the call come in, Georgian Bay Search and Rescue triaging it, that a phone call had been made, and then people were deployed, and then the people show up at the reception center and because they had been evacuated, right? So it was really interesting to see how that all worked out, and they're looking at developing something to plug and play for other communities. So Gravenhurst can be really proud of setting a really good standard there. Again, so there was a town staffer, at least 2 town staffers in the facility at all times, and at night and during the day, and there was also all of the volunteers as well. We actually, as the emergency progressed, we had so many volunteers as people were able to get out of their homes. We had too many volunteers of town staff wanting to be part of the emergency effort, because everybody just cares so much about this community and just wanted to do whatever they could. So we had an overabundance of volunteers, which is never a problem, but it kind of is a problem when everyone wants to help and you don't have jobs for them all. So I just can't say enough about the Global Medic, Salvation Army, the District Paramedic Services, and also health services. We had 2 mental health resources on standby 24 hours a day. If someone came in and needed that resource, we had a direct line into a mental health support worker. So, and that's all provided through that was offered through the district. So we're just really blessed to have had that in our back pocket. Thankfully, it wasn't needed. About 100 people came through the doors over the course of the emergency, and thankfully, only one person needed to spend the night, and that one person, I feel like it was, again, a success story. We were able to make some connections with that person and put them in touch with the resources that are available in our community that they weren't aware about, and they are now in longer-term emergency care and shelter. So I think that's a big success story. As the emergency wound down and power was restored and access was more easily available, we transitioned back to a warming center, and I passed the keys, thankfully, over to Ms. Patterson, who was able to get back into town. And it was operated during normal business hours of the Centennial Center, and then formally closed. But during the course of the event, I'm just in awe of the people that actually run into an emergency. They don't run away from it. And being in development services, it's completely 180, different side of the brain that you have to use for this type of event. And I'm just blessed to be a part of just a small piece of the overall emergency response. So that's all I'm going to say.
Well, thank you, and I'm going to share a story about that. So after our first go-around, and I do want to recognize Councillor Hunter was our inside track at Sobeys. She had just texted me and said she was going to pick up Ava, from work. I'm telling too much information here, but, and I said, oh, they're open? Can we get some food? Anyway, she and Craig both jumped right in and came to help at the reception center. And in fact, Councillor Hunter opened her home up to 2 people.
Yes, yeah. I
That
didn't
was-
want to do that, so it was an incredible effort.
Yeah, so that we're stranded, so pretty remarkable. So we are going to go over to Mike.
I shall try not to make anyone cry during my presentation. So my role was as emergency information officer, and we utilized tactics that we determined through ongoing consultation with the rest of the control group. We issued our first state of emergency news release shortly after the Mayor Lorenz declared the emergency. And almost immediately after that, we launched our emergency updates page and began populating it with content about the emergency. And this is the page is a tool that we had already built out a long time ago, several months ago, a year ago, with sort of some basic information. So we had it ready to go if we ever needed to declare. And once we launched the page, we started to add additional information to it. So it included links to our news releases, links to other sites that would be helpful to people, such as the OPP, the District of Muskoka. Later on, we added 511, the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit. There were links to Hydro One's outage maps and information, as well as Alexicons. Over the course of the emergency, we issued, some of this will sound repetitive because of the presentation I did to you recently, but I wanted to include it in both of my reports. So if you heard my communications report at Committee of the Whole, some of this will sound familiar. But we issued 14 media releases during the emergency, which was approximately 1 each day. Early on, we did do, I think it was 2 a day. And these conveyed information about current daily state of affairs, operational updates, community support resources, and one of the things we developed was a Q&A. These were published to our website, and they were also emailed to our subscribers. We shared them with council members and our entire municipal staff to help get the word out. Information was also distributed through the town's social media channels, so Facebook, Instagram, X, and we also did some paid messaging through Facebook where we targeted specifically the Gravenhurst and Muskoka area to help get that information out in front of people. We also hosted 2 virtual press conferences, and these were really important, we felt. So these were attended by local media. We also had representatives from Canadian Press, and if you're not familiar with that organization, it's the national organization for media outlets across the country. So Canadian Press has its own resources. They cover news events, such as emergencies, and then they distribute their stories to all of their members. We had CBC participate in these virtual conferences, as well as local media. We received about 30 media inquiries, and we facilitated approximately 18 interviews. Mayor Lorenz, in the press conferences that we hosted and in the one-on-one interviews, served as the town spokesperson. So again, we did interviews with local media, people such as James Bowler at Cogeco, I believe Brent Cooper at MuskokaRegion.com are one of the people we spoke to. But we also spoke with CBC News, Global News, CP24, the Weather Network. So we talked to a lot of different media platforms. Following the conclusion of the emergency, we issued our last update, which included a timeline about what had happened. As I noted in the report to Committee of the Whole, our website saw considerable traffic during the emergency. And just to put that into context, my colleague, Leanne Federley, who oversees our marketing efforts, pulled these stats for us, and I think they're pretty impressive. So the average monthly views are 36,000. This is for our website. It jumped to 113,000 during the state of emergency. The majority of the traffic was to our news post section of our website, and in particular also the emergency updates webpage. And this website traffic was from organic searches, people Googling information, people going right to gravenhurst.ca. And then our social media accounts gained a significant number of new followers. So we had 313 Facebook followers. That's 552%. We had 146 new Instagram followers. And we saw content interactions increase. So we had 45,000 interactions through Facebook. That was up 200%. We had 949 interactions through Instagram, which was up 150%. We strive to provide the community with accurate and useful information about the situation in as timely manner as possible. And I know that throughout the emergency, we were certainly cognizant of the fact that people kept wanting more and more detailed and granular information, and there were times that we could not provide that type of information. As we got further into the emergency, we were able to break down specific, here's the streets we're working on today, but that was not the case early on. I want to thank our media partners for helping us get out this information. We often hear a lot of complaints about the media. Well, we're very fortunate to have a lot of great local media partners here in Gravenhurst and throughout Muskoka, and they really went to bat for us and made sure that our message got out. And I want to say another thank you to the provincial and media, provincial and federal, national rather, media outlets. And I also want to take a moment to recognize some of the social media page operators in our community, because they help share our message and amplify it and get it out in front of people. So that's what I wanted to share with you today from a communications point of view. We have a little video that we'll share, I believe, at the end of the meeting, and I'll set it up now. It's a collection of images from the emergency, what we were seeing out on the roads, and you'll also see the faces of our team, the people that we're trying to deal with the emergency. So that's what you're going to see in that presentation when it plays. It is not every face that was involved, but it's a lot of them. So anyways, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks, Mike. Another very calm, feet on the ground sort of presence to have around during an emergency. So I want to personally thank you for, your advice and your help to get through this unusual event. Hopefully we won't have another anytime soon, but your experience in communications and media certainly helped us put our best foot forward, and so thank you. Now we're going to go over to Wayne Campbell, our new treasurer, who came into this, I think it was his first day when the snow started, and I'm very thankful that you're still here. So this is not a usual snowfall for us, but again, you came in right as it started, and you must have been thinking, what the heck have I done here? But I'll leave it to you to talk about dollars and cents. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, Council. So I'm here to speak about the financial ramifications of the weather event. I mean, I've never experienced something of this magnitude. Of course, I was coming from the north. I've been in the north, and I've seen close to similar, but nothing of this magnitude. But suffice to say, I mean, I am really happy that I was able to, to contribute in a very invaluable way to this event. So I'll be speaking this morning about the efforts that the town has embarked on to secure financial assistance from the provincial bodies. And Director Stacey will speak more about the initial cost estimates as it regards to the snow event. So I'll hand over to Director Stacey, and then I'll speak more about the funding assistance.
Thank you, and hello again. As far as the dollars and cents that we feel that we would be eligible for recovery from, hopefully, at the time of writing the report, we estimate around $2 million. We have been receiving invoices now for a couple weeks and scrutinizing those invoices and extrapolating costs of what we would see as normal business, what we see as costs that would normally typically be absorbed by the District of Muskoka under our area maintenance agreement. And I'm fairly pleased to report that the number of roughly $2 million that's in the report before you today, we feel that's a little less right now. So at this point in time, we're targeting between a $1.3 to $1.5 million expense all in. That includes our municipal partners who came to our rescue, the additional contracted resources that we had to retain to see us through the storm event, and the additional time that my team put into to address the event as well. So I think that's a good news story in itself, and I'll pass it over to our treasurer to talk about the specifics about the grant that we're hoping to obtain.
All right, so we've been exploring potential funding assistance from provincial bodies to assist with the snow event. We've connected so far with EMO, and they have indicated that they don't provide support for this kind of event. However, we have reached out to the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs, and we've been working closely with them to get potential funding assistance from them. So as it stands now, we are gathering information, documentation, records, expenditure-related records to the event, and we're also trying to quantify our cost and also identify the eligible cost under the MMAH program. So we're anticipating submitting the application within coming weeks. Or we have a March 31st deadline to submit. So just in the event, as a contingency plan, in the event that our costs are not covered by the program, the funding program, we have any shortfalls we will absorb in our town's reserve. But we've been taking a very proactive and prudent approach in trying to manage the financial implications of the event. So we'll continue to work diligently to secure funding and, of course, manage the financial implications of the event. So more to come as we try to gather information. It's a lot to do, but thanks for the unwavering support from Director Stacey and our fire chief and the finance team. We've been working collaboratively to achieve this goal, and we're anticipating great things. All being well, we get some positive results from MMAH, so more to come on that. Thank you.
Okay, like I said, all hands on deck. Treasury's up to their elbows in it now, so we have all the confidence that you're going to be successful. Okay, so now we're going to go to Scott, although I wonder if there's any questions before I go to Scott. Are there any questions for anyone who's done presentation? Councillor Jorgensen?
Of course, a question. One thing I didn't hear in the communications side of things, and for those of us who subscribe to the town's emails, and I'm afraid I suspect that it's not a high percentage of people who live in town who subscribe to our emails. Certainly the information was fantastic and available, but again, it's reaching those people who don't subscribe. And I'm wondering in particular, like, we have the Voyant Alert program that's supposed to push emergency messages out to subscribers, and I'm just wondering, I don't think I recalled seeing anything through that application, and I'm just wondering if there's, again, I suspect the uptake of that particular application is relatively low too, but is there any thought to going forward, how we can kind of get alerts on people's cell phones that, so they don't have to phone in to get information or that type of thing? It just is pushed to them.
Mr. Jennings?
Yeah, through your worship to the councillor. So the Voyant part of the question, the deputy chief and I had a discussion Sunday morning about whether we were going to utilize Voyant. And the decision that we reached was, because we had declared the significant weather event the day before and had been using our traditional channels, and because it had, by the time we were ready to push out our messaging, I think the first message went out around 7 o'clock Sunday morning, we decided that we would not use Voyant to share that message. So that was the rationale we had behind the use of it. We knew we did have it as a tool if we wanted to push stuff out, but that was the decision that we had made about 7 o'clock Sunday morning. In part of response to the other part of your question, we are researching a texting service that we can use for general communications messaging to people. And I'm hoping to bring forward something about that later on this year. But essentially, people would sign up by entering in their phone number, not unlike you do through some stores now if you want to get some marketing messaging from them. And we'll be able to send a message to you over text, right, to your cell phone. It can include hyperlinks, which will bring you through to our website. So that's something that we're working on.
A subsequent question, or?
Just as a follow-up to something that came to mind, I mean, have we ever given any consideration to a Gravenhurst app? Because when you have an app on your phone that you can turn, you can allow notifications, because that's the thing when people seem to respond to, as you say, the text message popping up or a notification on your phone. I'm just wondering if that's on the radar at all, because that would be probably a fairly inexpensive thing we could do to supplement, the idea of pushing this information out to subscribers rather than people having to go look for it.
Through you, your worship, to the councillor. That's a fantastic idea, and it's actually one of the things that we're kind of researching with the text thing, is where there's some service providers that provide strictly text, and then there's some others that provide apps. So that's something that we're reviewing.
Deputy Chief Clapp, you wanted to add something?
Thank you. Through you to the councillor. We did have a conversation with Emergency Management Ontario about utilizing the provincial Alert Ready notification as well, which you'll be familiar with, seeing Amber Alerts and things like that go through. Unfortunately, we didn't meet the criteria. So we tried to leverage that, but we just didn't meet the criteria.
Mr. Lucas, you have something?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the other variable here, and I suspect was part of the original discussion about whether we use Voyant Alert or not, is that this wasn't really a singular incident. There wasn't a moment in time where it was like, okay, this event happened at this point, now it's an emergency. It was such a sort of a slow roll up, and then sort of a build and a build and a build of different circumstances to the point where 1:32 in the morning, at that point we decided to declare, because we at that point decided it was just too out of hand in terms of staff's resources to be able to deal with it. So it was a bit of an interesting emergency, and from a Voyant perspective, I think there wasn't that sort of singular instance to say, okay, this happened, like a train derailment or something like that, where there's that one point that you alert everyone. This was sort of a slow rollout over multiple days.
Okay, so Council, CAO Lucas was going to speak. I'm just looking at our agenda here, and then I was going to wrap it up, but I'll put it to Council. You've heard from staff. you know, the sequence of events that happened. Just give anybody the opportunity to, you know, have any comments or questions before we wrap up. Councillor Hunter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I mean, I do want to obviously say thank you to everybody, each and every department. As you can see, it was all hands on deck. You know, I want to thank the plow operators, and I think when we see some of the negativity online, you know, for us and for staff and everybody, it's difficult to see. But I also want to take this opportunity to thank the mayor because the mayor had her hand in every single department throughout this emergency, and I think sometimes the public doesn't see that. And it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of things that people just don't see. So while everybody was working so hard, you know, Madam Mayor, you were also working really, really hard. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you to all the staff, everybody. You know, I'm super proud of this community, but super proud of you as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks very much. Obviously, you know, I'm going to address, you know, some of the negativity that, you know, that was out there against all, you know, us as a collective, me as a human. And so I appreciate being recognized as, you know, I'm a person. And so to the people who really want to, like, I'm chief punching bag, that's fine. But, you know, it was pretty nasty out there. And I just want to say to the staff, I got you. I got your back. I'm not going to retaliate, but I know, and we all know what this community did. And so we're going to be above all of that. And it's hard. It's hard to be in the public eye. It's hard for, you know, it's hard for all of you who had to, and your families who had to see some of the negativity. And that's why we're here today, is to make sure that the public know exactly what went on, what the challenges were, and why, you know, we didn't clear snow off some of the more traveled roads as quickly as people had hoped. And believe me, I would have liked to seen it too. I think all of us know that there was some significant challenges. I mean, the highway being the top one, of being able to reach two of our wards. Our largest wards were covered in snow for 3 days, 6 feet of snow. So I appreciate the comments. I signed up for this. It's not always easy, but I'm really, really proud of the job that everybody here does. And I you know, I'll take it every day if that's what it means to lead this community. So thank you. I'm going to go on to my comments and then pass it back to Scott while I'm on a roll and I'm not crying. So I'm just going to say I want to thank my colleagues for reaching out to me around this table and beyond. I heard from a lot of other elected officials and mayors and Reeves, and it was really moving, as Director Stacey said, to hear from our, you know, from colleagues that, you know, just checking in to see how we're doing. I heard from Graydon Smith, our MPP. I heard from the Premier directly, Emergency Management Ontario, the president of Alexicon. I almost called it Viridian, pardon me. But, you know, all of these people took time out of their days just to check in, and a number of members of the public sent really positive notes, and those, like I said, those are what are going to stick with me going forward. There were amazing stories from the members of public. I think that there's too many to mention here, and I would hate to not you know, mention them all, but there was stories of the trucks on Bethune. A private person went and dug them out so they could get on their way once the road was opened. We had people delivering groceries on snowmobiles. We had people helping other people, neighbors. You know, we know out in Barkway there was people with tractors digging people out. We know that there were, you know, an amazing amount of people who were helping every day their neighbors, and We want to keep track of these stories, and it comes to my next point. We have Janet Merkley and Gord Durnan here, and they are going to compile some of these stories. And we encourage you, and we will have some information. We will link you with them to the public to tell these stories. We want to hear them. They're part of the history. They make up, you know, some of the great things that happen in this community, and we certainly want to amplify them. We also want to encourage people to, Spirit Awards is this year, so please, if you have a story, please send it in. You know, nominate your friends and neighbors. I think that's really important. I think we also hit on something that I believe is really important, which is facts matter. So get your information to the public. Please get your information straight from the source. District did have to put out an announcement saying that the drinking water was safe. There was, you know, some false information circulating. So please get your information from the source. I think it's really important, especially in a time of crisis, that we're receiving. Facts still matter. It seems that it doesn't in 2025, which is sad, but they do. Facts matter. And I do have a list of people that I want to recognize, of course. We are here primarily to recognize our staff and the incredible work we've done. I'd like to recognize the ECG team and members from the external agencies and the role they played. I think I mentioned some of those people who reached out. More specifically, the following groups and individuals. The Georgian Bay Search and Rescue, the OPP, Red Cross staff and volunteers, in particular Brandon Keeping of the South Muskoka Salvation Army and Trevor McLennan, Global Medic volunteers, in particular Stefan Mueller, District of Muskoka Paramedic Services, Jeff Williams and his team, thank you very much. Michelle Russell, Manager of Strategies and Initiatives, the Health Services District of Muskoka. The Gravenhurst Calvary Church provided frozen meals for the reception center. Essence of Spice, who we heard came, you know, through the snow and brought food for our stranded motorists. Sobeys, we all saw our beloved Sobeys owner on the news, a local celebrity now, for helping the stranded motorists, and also, again, through our connection, our counselor who had the inside track there provided food for the stranded motorists. Emergency Management Ontario, who we didn't know we needed them. Like, you never know what you need until they're there, and they helped us along. And District of Muskoka Demand Responsive Transit staff, including Adele Grant and bus driver Frank, so who was offering free town rides to provided to those who needed it. So again, I won't go on and on. I think that on behalf of council, thank you to staff. Everybody played a part. I couldn't believe, I went to the reception center to sit with staff for a bit, and I couldn't believe the staff members rolling in to come and do an overnight shift and be away from their families to work at that reception center. It's pretty remarkable. So those, again, the good news stories are the ones that I'm gonna carry forward, and great job. And I'll throw it back to Scott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I really can't beat that. I think at the end of the day, the point of today's session really was to provide some accurate information about the Herculean efforts, as Chief Cayley referred to it as, across the board, whether it's staff, whether it's members of council. I'm sure your phones were ringing off the hook. The mayor, in terms of her efforts in all aspects of the emergency. But the point of today and was really to provide a bit of celebration in addition to that information. We would have loved to have had everyone who contributed in this room. I think we need a much bigger room. But in the absence of being able to do that, we have some folks in the audience here from staff who did phenomenal work throughout the emergency. But in the absence of being able to have everyone here, we've put together a bit of a slideshow that, as Mr. Jennings indicated, demonstrates some of the conditions that we experienced, in addition to some photos of some, but certainly not all of the teams that contributed over the last little while. So if there's one theme that I can draw on from today, it's proud, and I think we all should be. So with that, I think we can dive right into the video that's been put together here. So.
Okay, so I think we've covered it. There'll be lots of conversations to come. I think this will go down in history for sure. And with that, I did have a resolution that I feel like I read 100 years ago. Be resolved, the report ADM 2025 State of Emergency be received for information. So, Council, please vote on that. And that carries, thank you. And with that, it's, I'm going to adjourn. It's, oh no, sorry, confirmation bylaw. Sorry, it's moved by Councillor Strength, second by Councillor Varney. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2025-11 to confirm the special council meeting held on January 31st, 2025 be passed. Please vote. That carries, thank you. And I will go to motion to adjourn. Councillor Cairns and Councillor Hunter. Okay, and please vote.